it really supports the logic behind this. It really supports the conversations and that engagement piece around actually this isn't just something you're asking me to do on top of everything else I'm doing. There is a purpose behind this. And that's why, as you can see there, we talk about when you spend time in understanding that the purpose and the identity and the values that you're trying to protect, it becomes very much more integrated into how you run your business. So that to me is really the foundation, the starting point for this process. Then we move on to align, which is really about how do you make this work alongside everything else you're doing in the organization. And again, it falls out from we're doing this to protect the most important things, and we've got that clarity about the anchor point, because it then talks about making sure that you've got coherence with the right priorities, and then it becomes something that we want to do. You want individuals who want to do business continuity resilience, not just something that you're asking me to do. So it starts to help to make sure that we're all aligned with that right way of doing things, removing some of that friction that you might see in organizations. We then move into activate, and here we're talking about how do you make this, again, the everyday way of doing things. So how do you actually turn this into something that is muscle memory, that is building that right culture, that is something about how people want to work? And a lot of this is that element of the small actions that we see in organizations. So it might be the small nudges that you do around updating plans. It might be the small nudges you do around recognizing when people have dealt with events appropriately, and just, how do you make sure that business continuity resilience is part and parcel of everything we do? So turning things into real events, and a lot of this often comes in when we do exercising and actually talk to people about the threats that they're concerned about, the threats that they're planning for. But it is about saying, actually, why have we spent all this time preparing you? We've done that for these reasons, and that's what Activate really talks about. And then the final element is about adapt. And this is that, how do you bring it really back full circle to making sure that you are continuing to learn from these disruptions, that you are adapting all the time as an organization, and that you are seeing the adventure, where my brain went to the adventure of business continuity, the adventure of resilience, but just seeing that, that element of we should be continuing to challenge ourselves. We should be continuing to think about business continuity and resilience as a way of keeping our organizations going. And how do we build that kind of continuous improvement culture, that learning culture, that ability to become a high performing organization that really does challenge everything we do, and makes business continuity and resilience something that we bring into the way we run the business, the way we start out in projects, the way we start out in our approaches, and treats it as a competitive advantage, and actually something that we can build on going forward. So that's a very whistle-stop view of the 4A principles. What I wanted to do is to kind of, and I recognize some of you are here as consultants, but it'd be really good just to get people's view on, in your perspectives, where do you think you can see this is working? Where do you think that there may be some strengths about this? Where do you see gaps or vulnerabilities in the work you're doing with different organizations? Anyone care to share?
I mean, I think, thank you. It's really interesting. I think still a lot of organizations are still in the the point. I mean, I like the anchor, it should be anchored into everything you do. And I think a lot of organizations are still very reactive, and you have an event, it's dealt with, there's some recovery, and then there's either okay, let's just pause everything for a while, take a deep breath, and it gets forgotten about, or it slowly kind of whimpers out until the next thing happens, except for the poor soul who's left on their own, still trying to do this for everyone. I just kind of, when I talk to organisations about it, it's I'm the proactive one, I think, approaching them about it. It's not something that's on their mind. They think we really must get on top of. So
Yeah.
I mean, I quite like, it should be there. It keeps saying it should be there. But in an argument I used to get quite a lot of, yeah, but if it never happens, it's not a problem. And you're like, well, technically yes, but actually it can strengthen your whole business as a whole anyway. And it's not just about crisis. It's, covering people when they leave, when they're sick, and you've thought all that through, because actually there's a lot of value in business continuity and the resilience just by doing that. So it doesn't have to be a kind of a big bang. It can be something smaller, but actually there is some kind of contingency planning already there naturally in the organization.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And actually, the where I am today, I'm with a rail client, and one of the things, having done a session with them this morning, I would say is that they're very much in that element of, I suppose, they are anchored in knowing what they need to do. What's the focus? They need to keep the industry running. They need to keep trains running, and they are very aligned about how they were going to do that. What we talked about today was a little bit about how do they do that continuous improvement. So we were very much in the kind of more in the adapt phase, but how do they keep doing it? But I think to your point, Andy, a lot of it was around they aren't waiting for disruption to happen, because disruption happens all the time. So they sort of see it as a way of working, and they are very much doing that all the time, to the point that it's hard for them to see when this becomes bigger. Because it's just this is our normal operation, which is part of the challenge I'm dealing with right now. But it does, it is much more of a resilience approach rather than a continuity approach, because they're not waiting for the big bang. They just let's just keep the rail going all the time.
And do you think that the fact that they are dealing with it all the time, do you think that makes them kind of stronger in a way, or actually when something big does happen, are they going to be kind of too stuck in this is day to day and not understand I'm not saying they'd ignore it completely, but perhaps not be able to step up to this requires something bigger, something more, because they'll have teams of people dealing with this all the time, because we've all caught a train, and I'm not sure what they're like in South Africa, but in the UK they're always having problems. So are they ready to kind of go from day to day to, okay, this needs more, we need to pull more resource into this, and it would still work as smoothly?
I think that's a really good one, and that has literally been some of the conversation this morning. Is about
that's why you're there.
Exactly, that's why I'm there, because we're having that discussion, and I think it's still a bit individual specific, and team specific right now, which is part of, again, back to some of that. They're not quite doing. I'm not quite getting them to do some of the middle elements around building those behaviours that really maybe spreads it out from those people that are very familiar with it and are really doing this day in, day out. So that's sort of a big focus is the cultural piece. You get this, it's not just dependent on the individuals that are available on the day, that this is more about how we operate, and that we see that that works for us on a day-to-day basis, but we can also see when we might need that additional support, and it's kind of framing it in that way is some of the discussions today.
Interesting.
Which has been interesting. Any other thoughts around this? Because we're kind of at the discussion phase. If there's anything else that anyone wanted to share?
Just trying to have a think about which is our greatest strength right now.
Yeah.
I think we know what what our values are and kind of what our purpose is. Obviously to keep services running for our residents and kind of make sure that that's working no matter what we're facing as an organisation. I think we are starting to reach a point where people are coming to look for me, which is lovely, and kind of go, but we need to do this bit next. So the our culture is definitely developing, and people are getting the idea of being resilient and kind of making sure that we are prepared. And there are some sections where there's still a way to go, but it's definitely moving in the right direction. I think our biggest gap at the moment is getting our processes into people's schedules, and making sure that they're leaving enough time for, we've got plans written, but we need to exercise them, and just kind of closing that loop and making sure we're learning as much as we can before any of these events potentially happen for real. I think that's kind of the next gap that I'd like to see closed.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I think when you were sharing that, it kind of occurred to me that you probably find that people are at different parts of the organisation, probably are a bit further along in different places, and kind of you might look at this cycle and go, well, actually, yeah, some of them really have that anchor sorted, but maybe they're not quite getting the align or adapt, and they're not quite understanding that element. And I think that's certainly what I see. And I guess back to what, sharing what my experience of this morning is, operations, people that are operationally focused, they're the ones that are definitely getting this. Some of the other functions are the ones where they're not necessarily thinking about this in the same way, and that's kind of where some of the challenge comes from, is how to make them, make it again part of how we all operate, rather than just sort of every so often, or a certain team think about it in that way. And if that sort of seems reflective.
Yeah, Claire, if I can ask a question, I did work with someone Helen knows very well. We did a review post-COVID of a council and their response, and one of the things that we found was that whilst the core team who did resilience were very good, the pressure on them during COVID was immense, and the same names popped up time and time again of people who'd actually jumped in feet first, had got on with stuff and done it, and kind of their cadre of people that could be pulled in to do stuff was just quite weak and small. And within the organisation, whilst managers were quite good at saying, right, you can't actually do anything, go home, they weren't very good at saying, you can't actually do your day-to-day job here, why don't you actually get onto the crisis team in the council who are running around like mad hatters, and see if there's some of the skill set you can add to that. Has that, I mean, Northumberland may be very different in the first instance, but I'm just wondering, kind of thinking about kind of embedding it and getting more embedded in your organisation. Is that still, do you think, would that be a challenge for you, or do you think that's kind of slowly spreading beyond the people that are on this call that know about this and want to be involved in it? That's why we're all here, to kind of others who go, actually, if something does happen, I can jump in and I might have a skill that's useful.
I think we've gone through obviously a lot of change since COVID as well. We've got different sort of command and control structures in place now, which we were definitely not as robust 5-6 years ago. So we've got sort of an on-call team that will face, an external incident or a business continuity incident, and kind of start to manage that. I think the work I've been doing in the last 3 years is definitely raised the profile of business continuity. I think the kind of heads and services and managers and people that have been involved in the process definitely understand that, they have a role to play in that as well. And we do talk about obviously critical functions. What are you going to be doing if we face this disruption? But yeah, we're trying not to miss out. If you're not a critical function, where else can your skills be used in the organisation? So it's definitely something that we're talking about. I think there's still a way to go in maybe aligning teams potentially, or people with different skill sets where the support would be available, and kind of making those links a bit more robust, and get some plan, sort of work in that opposite area before an incident happens, so that it's, you haven't just done that alignment process, but actually you've got a little bit of understanding about what you might be stepping into in those circumstances. So it's kind of there, but we're not there yet.
No, I was just interested to see whether it kind of sounds like it's moving more in the right direction. But I think it's a very long journey for a big organization.
There's kind of been a program of kind of looking at job descriptions and kind of grouping them into families and that kind of skill sets done by our HR team. But we need to, I think the rest of the organisation still needs to understand that a bit more and kind of what that might mean practically. But it has been started. So
yeah.
Good to hear.
Yeah. I think that's a good point though. Just generally, this is something that isn't none of this is short duration. That's one of the things I think I struggle with most when I'm talking to people is they're looking for the quick fix. Organizations are often looking for the quick fix or they want a specific thing. And it's, I guess, a little bit of a personal struggle for me that I'm trying to sell them on the bigger idea of, well, actually, I can come in and write a crisis management plan, I can do a BIA, but that isn't necessarily going to fix your organization in the sense of you're not going to necessarily be thinking about resilience anymore in the right direction to how I would be suggesting you do it. You're not going to be focused on how do you'll know what your critical activities are, or you'll be able to deal with that kind of immediate big bang. But my view would be there's much more time and effort, or it's much more valuable to spend time and effort on actually how do you get the organization working in the right direction, and working together and I guess rerouting it in what really matters to you and what's your focus going to be from an anchor perspective, because I think that drives again a lot of the other discussions. But it's not always an easy sell. It's not always an easy element to get people to be interested in to some extent, because it is the longer term thing. It is the thing that creates more benefit, but takes much more time to do and takes much more effort to do in terms of building that right culture, right approach, which is fun but challenging.
I'm sitting quietly listening at the moment because it's been quite some time since I've joined you, Helen.
Yeah.
And now in consulting, my perspective on resilience is quite different in terms of the proactive side.
Mm-hmm.
But I sense you link it to business continuity mainly. So just thinking back then to my previous life at power plants in South Africa, where I worked for 30 odd years. Very, in principle, similar to, I would guess, a rail system. Massive capital infrastructure. You do what you do. You can't just pivot to something else very quickly. So it's more about protecting what you have and making sure that it performs. And in South Africa, the rail is horrendous. A lot of it has been stolen and is not usable. But thinking back about the electricity industry, it's a state-owned company that has been operating for 100 years. Everything is well established, well practiced. Everybody knows what to do. When things go wrong, it's a fairly stable situation. You have a power plant right next to a mine. They were built right next to a coal mine at that point. And then I moved to the Philippines, and I had a totally different view because we started a new power plant. And you don't have coal. It comes in via ship from Indonesia. You have the language barriers, and you had to establish all of this from nothing, because literally we went there to establish the operations and maintenance while they were constructing. And then when it was operating, we had our few things to deal with. And initially, it kind of felt out of control, because you come from an environment where you're very used to how you deal with things going wrong. And now you ensure that the business continues. Very controlled. Everybody knows where they need to go, what they should do, and now you're in an environment where everybody rushes to the scene. But I think in the time that we were there for 5 years just to get everything going. If I look at your 4As, I think the anchoring and the alignment we got done pretty well. Partly, with the activation. We've seen some of the adaptation as well. The learning, because when you're in a new business, things do go wrong. And we could literally see how it improves from one incident, to the next. My context now is very different. It's in a commercial environment, and I see resilience in a very different way. My definition of it didn't change. My definition of it is really being proactive. How you deal with preventing incidents, not only in how you deal with them when they happen. And now, when you sit in a commercial environment where you're doing new things, that really comes to its full right as well. So quite a different perspective that I have now, and I'm absolutely enjoying it. It's not about only protecting value; it's also about creating value.
That sounds really good, because I think that again is is being resilient as opposed to just continuing things. It is about how do you and you again make it something that has got an advantage, gives people advantages and becomes again part and parcel of how you redesign a process or design new processes. And it's let's make this business more what do I want to say? It's about building strategic advantage. I can't think of a better way, because that feels very consultancy. I didn't really want to use that word, but it is. It's about this is going to give you an advantage by thinking this way, by having these approaches, and by building this into the way you design your organization as opposed to anything else you do.
Yeah,
which is really cool.
Yeah. To me, it's about building capability, capability in the organization and in the people. For the proactive side and for dealing with things when they go wrong.
Yeah, and the more you do it in the proactive side, the better prepared you are for the reactive. Obviously, that's again the key is being resilient. We don't spend we spend more time planning for things than we do responding to it. Then when we do respond, it happens quicker. It happens more efficiently, and we're not as disrupted.
Yes,
it's really good. Interesting. Maybe we'll get you back to talk about that at some time. That would be really interesting.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah. Okay. Any other comments? Otherwise, I will give you back 10 minutes of your day.
No, not for me.
Thank you both.
It's very interesting.
Right.
Very interesting, Helen.
Yeah, nothing more.
Nice way to put it as well.
Yeah, that's. I mean, for me, this was, as I say, it's not. It's like it's suddenly unlocked how I talk about what I've been doing all the time. So it's like it's not new or different. It's just suddenly I'm like, oh, this makes sense. And if I talk about it in this way, it becomes something that people can interpret and make it work for them, rather than what I often find is the case is you're just saying all those things, but you're not saying the right words that mean something.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thank you both. Lovely to catch up
Thank you very
with you
much.
both, and hopefully see you again soon.
Yes. Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
Helen.
Thank
Yes,
you.
nice to meet you, Martin.
Bye.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye-bye.